Powered by GoGoat Sports in partnership with TSN. It is episode 67. It is season 4 of the Rain Dregs Hockey Podcast. Presented by your title sponsor, Canadian Club Whiskey. Ray, you were in Vegas for the first 2 games of the Western Conference Final, which we'll touch on, and headlines. And now it looks like for anybody on our YouTube channel, I can see the gear hanging off the lamp behind you.
Still in Vegas, Dregs, even though I thought I was.
Vegas. Okay.
Yeah, I thought I was going to be in Dallas, which is why I screwed up the taping time here.
That's fine.
Oh no, so I had this all set. 8:30.
Yes, you did.
Or 6:30 Pacific, 9:30 in the East for you. We were going to tape, but I thought I was going to be in Dallas.
You did.
However, I wasn't, and when I woke up to several texts saying, "Hey, we're here. What are you doing?"
It's all good, man.
Oops.
It's all good. Yeah, it's a holiday, Monday in Canada, Victoria Day, so I don't have a whole lot going on, so flexible.
Good.
I was doing some cleaning, and I know that's near and dear to your heart. I've got the garage to straighten out. It's not crazy, but it's my man cave, and it has to be tidied up. But I kind of expected that you would wake up and want to get going again, so I started cleaning the truck. So that's what I was doing.
Yeah, that's a good one. When the vehicle looks good, you feel good.
Agreed. Take us through the last couple of days in Vegas. Little golf with the sheriff.
Yeah, Shane Knighty and Dave Goucher hooked us up. We played a round with them, Sean McDonough and I, and they hosted us out at their club. And in a shocking upset, Sean and I lost.
What?
I got to tell you, Goucher played a round. I'm not sure he plays very often. He was really good.
Okay.
And of course the sheriff, he's as strong as a bull, and he hit some really good shots. It was a fun day. And then I actually saw a good family friend, Craig Cunningham, after.
Nice.
Craig, who for people that don't know was a pro player playing in Tucson at the time, and he had a cardiac event on the ice and was in a coma, and Dr. Calpe basically saved his life there, and he ended up with the bottom of his leg amputated. Craig has made just a remarkable comeback. He's one of the most positive people I've ever been around. He and Landon, my son, are great friends, and he's getting married this summer. He scouts for the Golden Knights, and we had dinner. It was awesome to catch up. He's a great kid.
Yeah, it's nice to have a little balance from your perspective too, right? I mean, you're working hard. You know, it's not like you're.
It was a good day, Dregs. It was a really, it was a good travel off day, which a lot of off days are just dead time. That was a good one.
Okay, not to dive into the personal stuff too much, but did you play some cards over the last few days or not?
Just yesterday, because the game was at 12.
Yeah.
Right, over at 3, went to work out, went for dinner, came back, and I made an educated decision to take half of my winnings from last time I was here.
Okay.
Down to the tables. So I came up, changed, did all that stuff, took half of the winnings, and came back with none of the winnings. So it was.
That's normally what happens, right?
I did say to the dealer, okay, so there's this music festival thing going on in Vegas, like hundreds of thousands of people. The people right now at 7:10 a.m. here, they'll just be getting back from it.
Yeah.
And it is.
Get a couple of hours and then get right back at it.
No, like these people, like they're out all night. This thing goes all night, and it's looks pretty wild. So anyways, the casinos are empty because everybody's up there. And so like all the younger people. And so it was me and a dealer for the most part, and she was really good. I had to remind her that she doesn't get to keep the money. Like, you could bust once in a while. And she was she was super nice, and she clobbered me. And I was begging for somebody else to come to the table. Please, somebody show up.
Good thing you only took half the winnings. See, that's a savvy veteran move, right?
That's a veteran move right there.
Good for you. Headlines presented by our friends at Tim Hortons. Well, we've talked a little bit about your experience in Vegas, but that's more on the peripheral, right? Like that's what you're doing when you're not doing hockey. And we are, entertained really by the first two games of the Western Conference Final. But let's just talk about the atmosphere around Vegas, right? If for the fans who haven't been to a game in Vegas, it is theatrical. It's an experience. It's an event. And that carries over from the regular season and certainly into the playoffs. But man, they've had a lot to celebrate in the first two games of this series.
Yeah, the first game they were really good. It almost didn't deserve to go to overtime.
Yeah.
Because Vegas was much better in the first game. Like Vegas, they were in control, and then all of a sudden it was 3-3.
Mm-hmm.
Like it was a really odd game, and Dallas didn't get much, but they picked and pecked away and got a couple of chances and scored, and then Vegas wins. That's probably the right result. Game two, like we commented several times how quiet that building was, which it's never quiet.
No.
Like Dallas they smothered them. There was nowhere to go, and Dallas wasn't getting a whole lot either, but it was 2-1, and it looks like it's under control, and then Ryan Suter makes a ill-timed, ugly turnover, and here's a guy it goes to show you though. Here's a guy that's played 1,472 combined playoff and regular season games.
Yeah.
And he makes a turnover that if it was a young player, you'd say, oh, he's got a,
blister,
he's
right.
Yeah, you'd be a little more understanding of why he could have panicked and made a play. Suter made a bad read at the wrong time, and then he made a cardinal sin. He kind of got halfway between two plays.
Yeah.
He was trying to bounce it off the boards to Heiskanen or rim it, and it kind of went halfway between, and Vegas jumped on it, and Marchessault scored, and 2 minutes into overtime, it's over, and now Dallas is in an enormous hole here. Even the old adage is you haven't lost a series till you lose at home.
Right.
But that felt last night like a really, really deep cutting loss. And it's going to be tough to wheel this around in one day for Dallas, but they're going to have to.
Look, I mean, this time of year, doesn't matter what the team, you have to seize opportunity and pounce on opportunity. But it's that momentum that goes along with it that certain teams have. And that's part of the ingredients, isn't it, of marching to the Stanley Cup final and maybe hoisting the Stanley Cup period. But that overtime winner, it developed like a Vegas opportunity. I think you called it at one point, Dallas was just simply outmanned, right? It was a 4-on-3.
Vegas makes the right play so much of the time.
Yeah.
They really do. And they don't make many gaffes. Their defense is really big and mobile. And I said in the open, somebody always scores for them. It's always a different somebody.
I know.
You just look at their lineup, and Eichel led their team in scoring with 66 points this year.
Mm-hmm.
Like 66 points. And yet, they win, they get to the position in the division they win with 5 different goalies. And it's because they make the right play way more than they make the wrong play. And I will say this, if I were a up and coming coach, I'd take a little bit of my off season and I'd try to understand Bruce Cassidy's defensive system. And the reason I would is Cassidy took it or learned it from Claude Julien.
Yeah.
From Claude Julien to Bruce Cassidy, Jim Montgomery said he didn't change anything in Boston this year defensively. So you've got Tuukka Rask and Tim Thomas and in all likelihood Linus Ullmark as Vezina Trophy winners with that system.
Yeah.
And you have a team win the division with 5 goalies. And so the way they give you shots from the soft area, they don't mind if they give up 35 of them, but it's really hard to get into the middle, into those the really good scoring places. And Dallas has had that problem in the first 2 games.
Yeah, but you have to have absolute buy-in, though, don't you? From you as a coach, you can tweak your defensive system and preach structure until you're blue in the face. If you don't have guys and top end guys, everyone buying in, you're going to have a problem. I guess I'm going over to Jack Eichel. How have you seen his game mature? Because he looks way more balanced now, both offensively and defensively than we've perhaps ever seen before.
Well, I would say that's a really fair comment of a player that was a savior in Buffalo.
Yeah.
And probably felt like he had to do everything, whether right or wrong. He probably felt that. And so when a player thinks that and they're an offensive player, they're most always going to cheat to being the offensive player. They don't want him or need him to be that here. And so he made a play in the second period. We showed it as a highlight. And it was Dodonov had a one-on-one. Had a lot of speed going at Pietrangelo, I believe. And Eichel, you can clock the speed. He was 21 miles an hour coming on the back check.
Wow.
And he came, lifted the stick, turned around and went the other way. There's no way 20-year-old Jack Eichel makes that play.
No chance.
And I said, I wouldn't have either. Like, I would have come back and looked over my shoulders and made sure another forward wasn't coming and left him to the defense. But today's game's about back pressure and pressure all over the ice. And he committed that play. He's played 2 great games and has 1 assist.
Yeah.
And it doesn't matter because now they're up 2-0. But I think sometimes you need to get older and experienced and settle in a little bit to be able to do that. And I thought he's been excellent in this series.
All right, let's wrap up the West. I mean, what should we expect with the series now shifting to Texas?
Well, I mean, pretty clearly it's all about game 3. If Dallas doesn't win, it's pretty much curtains. You're not going to beat Vegas 4 straight times. Dallas likes their balance in their lineup. They haven't got it in the first 2 games. The Domi, Marchment, Sagan line hasn't got on the board. They were -3 the first game. I wouldn't be surprised if we see Ty Dellandrea come in the lineup. He's probably their forward that could make a difference for them, or perhaps give a little spark to even that line. So I think that's it. But they don't really have a lot of changes to make. They played 55 minutes of a good game, but like Carolina's done, that if you play most of a good game, it doesn't seem to matter anymore.
No, you're right. Okay, let's go east. Carolina and Florida. That now shifts that series. Florida wins game 2 in overtime. And Matthew Tkachuk just finds a way, right? He continues to be a difference maker. But, it's just not about the goals, because if you're judging Matthew Tkachuk on that, the playoffs have been a ho-hum other than the big overtime winners. But that game 2, man, that was more of what we're used to seeing from Matthew, but almost in a very controlled manner, right? Like, he was after Brett Pesce and he's after Brent Burns, and he's just creating havoc in front of that Carolina net and doing everything that makes him a star player in the National Hockey League.
Yeah, but staying out of the penalty box, which he was not so great at earlier in his career. And so I talked about Eichel's game. Like, you got to be maybe a little older to embrace the way that Jack Eichel's playing, and he's done that. And I noticed a major difference. We had a few of Matthew's games in the first round, the Panthers, and in the regular season had a couple games too. And it just seemed like he wasn't in the slop as much anymore. And I think part of that is a realization. I don't know this, but I'm going to say just in appearance that he realizes his value on the ice. Yeah. You can still stir it up, but you need to be on the ice. And he's smart and he makes good plays. Like, he's really good around 15, 20 feet, a good little touch passes, give and go plays. And, he sprung free the other night. And, when Slavin drops his stick in the corner, Tkachuk's got a free roaming to the net. And man, this feels a lot, to my experience of what we did in '93, but we didn't win 2 games in this round. It's like a team that you think is overmatched just isn't. And Bobrovsky's been fabulous, been amazing in goal. Like, when I said about playing most of a good game, like, what part of the game does Carolina not like the other night?
I know.
The part they lost.
Yeah.
because in the first period, weren't the shots like 18-1 or
Yeah.
17-1 at one point?
Lopsided.
And Bobrovsky kept it at one.
Yeah.
And he's more than done his job. Now they go home, and uh, I, I still don't think it's over, but I think my heart tells me it's not over because I believe in Carolina, but my
Right.
head is telling me they got to win 4 out of 5 games, and 3 of the games are in
Yeah.
Florida.
It's tough.
Like it's a tough road here for Carolina for sure, because they what we thought was a weak spot at the start of the playoffs, Dregs, might become the weak spot here. Is they don't have easy goals in them. They
Yeah.
don't have a one shot from Pacioretty or a one shot from Svechnikov. And so they got to grind these games out. But that's how Florida's played. Florida's done this for 2 months, 3 months. They've done this since February. And man, they're full marks to be in the place they're in right now.
Well, and look, I mean, game by game, it looks like Sasha Barkov is getting better. And
Yes.
I
Yes.
remember having this conversation with Paul Maurice early in the second round, Leafs and Florida Panthers, and he said, Barkov was sick during the first round against Boston, and it took him a while to get his wind and everything that started to come back, and we saw that in the victory over the Leafs. But you can tell that he's got full stride again. I mean, that goal that he scored in the second period, Wayne Gretzky describes as one of the greatest moves he's ever seen in the Stanley Cup playoffs. So not that you expect that every single shift or even every game, but the fact that you've got a highly motivated, two-way skilled player in Sasha Barkov doing what he's doing, that's another problem for Carolina.
Well, for sure it is. That first, we started with the Boston series.
Yeah.
And Maurice had talked about that he had been ill and not feeling great, and he was just kind of out there. There was really no impact from anything that he was doing. He wasn't bad, but he wasn't making an impact. And I think he probably defaulted to being more of a safe player, so he didn't make mistakes that hurt his team. And
Yeah.
as you can just look at his production as the playoffs have gone on, and it's gotten better and better and better. And one guy that's really helped out is Anthony Duclair, who had a lost season. He tore his
Yeah.
Achilles tendon. He came back to a team that used to play, flip it out and chase it and hunt it, to a more controlled game. And Maurice told us it's taken him a long time, but man, he's been a factor along with Barkov in this round coming through the second round into this round for sure.
Yeah, and I'm with you. I don't think this series is over by a long shot. I do feel like even though it's shifting to Florida, Carolina is going to have some pushback and answers before this series wraps up. But there is something to be said about momentum and a team that just finds lightning in a bottle, right? And Florida seems to have that.
Sometimes it's just a team's year, right? Sometimes
Yeah.
it is. And right now it seems like, you can go back to if Pittsburgh had beaten Columbus, I think, and Chicago the last weekend, Florida's not in the playoffs. If Brad Marchand scores on that breakaway at the buzzer of Game 5, Florida's out. And now it's starting to steamroll for them, and 2 wins from the finals is pretty amazing stuff.
All right, well, let's get on to some off-ice information and news. Busy week in Canada. We should see the sale of the Ottawa Senators come to fruition. I mean, I felt this way right from the get-go, that Michael Andlauer, who is a minority owner with the Montreal Canadiens, one of the governors for the Montreal Canadiens, has had great relationships with the best of the best, top of the food chain of the National Hockey League for a long, long time. Many believe that he has the inside track, but we'll wait and see there. Craig Conroy will be named general manager of the Calgary Flames. And we shouldn't be overly surprised by that, right? Like, Connie's been around a long, long time. He's learned from a very experienced general manager, Brad Treliving, who will connect to the Maple Leafs in just a moment. It sounds like Dave Nonis is going to have a senior management position with the Calgary Flames. So that likely, gives ownership and Craig Conroy a little peace of mind, right? You know, you're bringing in a guy who's been there in 2 Canadian markets in Toronto and Vancouver. And Jerome McGinley doesn't sound like he's going to be as involved in year one. He's tied up coaching his kids, but it's expected he will be involved as a consultant. So what do you make? Let's start with Calgary. What do you make of the changes there?
Well, when they have a internal candidate, but it's incumbent upon the Flames to interview more people to see if your internal candidate's the one you really want. You shouldn't just, pick the guy that's sitting there because he's sitting there. And the one cool thing with Craig Conroy is that he's touched a lot of different parts of that organization, from scouting to the American League, into upper management. So most of the template he's already seen. However, he wants to set it up, but there's a lot of things that happen that most fans and lots of media don't realize when they say, "Oh, this person should be a general manager," and they've never really been around it. It's almost an impossible task to know how to put your left foot in front of the other. But Conroy's been in that management tree for so long that there's not an area he hasn't seen. And having I've always thought when a first time guy gets in, like if I ever was to get into any type of management, first thing I would do would find somebody like Dave, to sit there and go, yeah, this is how we could do this. You've got a sounding board to somebody that has been there all the time. I think it's really important. And management teams are not as small as they used to be.
No,
the best ones are more multifaceted. They have more voices. And I'm not surprised, I guess, for however about the process, that Craig's going to get the job. I think good for him. He's been there a long time, and if you're ever around him, you just get sucked into his energy. It's just he's such a infectious guy to be around. And as for Jerome Iginla, Jerome should be involved to the level that he wants to be. The guy is an icon in Calgary, and whether it's in a president's role or whatever that might be going forward, that's the right move. He should be involved.
All right, and a lot of work for the Flames to do there. I mean, they're a cap team, so they don't have a lot of space.
But they're also a team, Craig. Craig has in his hand that it should be a good team that wasn't.
Yeah.
So, new coach will come in, fresh outlook. Yeah. And I don't think Calgary's very far from being a good team, but they're windows now. They're not a team to, for 4 years from now. Their window is now.
Mm-hmm. All right, over to the Toronto Maple Leafs, who are beginning the interview process in hiring the general manager. As has been speculated, that Brad Treliving, formerly the Calgary Flames, is going to be involved, as he should be, and he will be considered a top candidate, if not the front-running candidate. Brendan Shanahan's media availability end of the week, Ray, said, "We need experience. It's a very attractive commodity." And the reason he said that is pretty obvious. I mean, they've got some major contracts to wrestle with the extension of Austin Matthews. What are you doing with William Nylander? I'm told that Shanahan is telling that core four, which is Nylander, Marner, Matthews, and Tavares, that he wants to keep that core intact. He wants to keep the gang together. Well, the new general manager is going to have some say in that. But before we look at what a new GM in Toronto needs to look like, what a week it was, right, for the Maple Leafs. I mean, I describe it as being bizarre because that's how it started with Dubas' media availability. And then the way it ended, which is it wasn't the way that Dubas wanted it to end. He went from having a contract extension possibility to being told, we're going in a different direction. And I don't think many people would have put any money on that going into his media availability on Monday.
My thought when I saw him do the availability, Kyle Dubas, was that nobody should ever do an availability when emotions are raw.
Yeah.
And that was now, did they lose on, was that 2 days after?
Yes. Yeah. Yeah.
There's no reason to do that with
So quickly.
that stuff bubbling up inside you. Take a week.
Hmm.
What would have been the damage had they taken till the following Thursday or
Yeah.
Wednesday and just not done anything?
So here's where I think, and I'm 100% on board with you. This was one of the missteps, I think, from Kyle's perspective here. He wanted to be with Sheldon Keefe and his team in meeting the media and telling the fans, yeah, it was an okay year, but I'm part of why this team wasn't as successful. I understand that. He wanted to be part of the group
But
signing
what
off
would
on
have
the
two
year.
days later? What would two
Agreed.
days later have done?
You're 100% right. And I know that people tried to talk him out of doing that media availability on Monday, not because they knew he was going to say, I don't know if I want to be a general manager because of the toll that it's taken on my family. I don't think that anyone expected him to say that, but Shanny, I'm sure, felt like, well, let's take a couple of days here and breathe. That's how close they were, Ray, to a contract extension. They had talked about the parameters of the finances and the term and the power and all of those things. And with a couple of extra days, I mean, some believe that a contract extension was imminent, but Kyle insisted on doing that media availability on Monday, and things just got turned upside down.
I'll say, here's one thing I thought of about, where he said about the toll on his family. And it's easy to say, well, that's the same everywhere else.
Yeah.
But I can't think of another general manager, and I'm trying, that's got a 3-year-old child. Like, because
Tough stage, man. It's a
it's
tough stage.
we all that have been parents, it's
Yeah.
a tough and wonderful stage of being a parent, of being around. Like, the pressure and responsibility of the job is immense. And of course, in Toronto, it's, you can tack on however many percent to that you want.
Right.
So I believe that emotion was real.
I do too.
And I just think clearly in the next couple of days that he was able to take a little bit of a half a step back, and in discussing with his wife and family. And because what day was it, Dregs? They went back and said, oh yeah, Kyle wants to be the GM. And
Thursday.
right.
Yeah.
So in those 2 days, what if you wouldn't have done that press conference?
We're not
You
having
probably,
this conversation.
no, we're not.
Yeah.
They would have talked through that.
Yeah.
And now the Leafs are caught. Dubas is caught because he said, if it's either Toronto or nothing, you're not going to see me pop up next week somewhere.
Mm-hmm.
Well, if he wanted to be the GM in Toronto, would he want to be the GM somewhere else?
Yeah. Yeah.
And so it was a really confusing, staggering thing to follow from afar.
Yeah. And look, later in the week, we'll have a better handle on who some of the other candidates are in Toronto. I mean, as I've acknowledged, Brad Treliving is probably right up at the top. I mean, there's been some speculation. Doug Armstrong, who's got 2-3 years left on his deal. I don't believe he has an out with the St. Louis Blues, so I don't know how that works. But anyway, we'll push on with that and maybe get a better handle on what that's going to look like later in the week. But let's wrap it up by headlines. That is, I said that Shanahan has talked about holding on to that core four. Is that a mistake? Do you think that change is needed here?
The difference is this year they've got about $20 million in cap space.
Yeah.
Right? So you can fill that around that four differently if you want to. Yeah. However, I think as you're watching, and Brendan would know this because he was that type of player that succeeds in the playoffs. Look at what's left.
Yeah.
Look at how hard it is. Do you believe those three players, because Tavares is there?
Yeah.
Right? You can say the four, but John, his contract's not going anywhere. So Do you think those three players have another gear of playoff hockey in them? And the problem is, doesn't matter if they get 130 points in the season next year. You won't know till now.
Yeah.
Myself, I think they do need to make a change. They're going to have, in all likelihood, a new coach. And like, I believe the new manager will probably think, you know what, I want to bring my own coach in.
Yeah, I agree.
And I did say earlier on, Dregs, when they lost, that it would be really hard to bring the same players and the same coach back. Something has to change in there.
Yeah.
Now, maybe the new general manager says, I love that 4 players, and so I got to change the coach. Or maybe the new general manager says, I like the coach and one of the players have to go. But I find it really unlikely, just from my view, that those 4 players and the same coach come back. I think something has to change.
I agree. Those are your headlines. Thank you to Tim Hortons.